I don't think I can see you either.
Hold on. Oh, it doesn't matter. I'm not that good looking, anyways.
Fair enough.
Um, I do have a camera hooked up to this Skype, but no, most of the time I use the regular camera for the Twitch feed. So if you're watching this live when we push it out to YouTube, we will both be there. So we'll get your great face, my average looking face, and it will be there.
Gotcha.
So I just I don't want to fiddle with the camera for the Skype. I use it. I unhook it and hook it in a lot because um, my daughters have to homeschool, so sometimes they need the camera upstairs, so they unhook it and they take
Oh,
it
I
up.
gotcha.
So it's not that big of a deal. It'll be fine. Anyways, first and foremost, thanks for coming on tonight. On a
No
Saturday night
problem, man.
at 9 o'clock. I was saying to people earlier because I started at 8 because I didn't realize normally I don't book guests on a night there's a pay-per-view in no matter what promotion, just because I just don't. I know people like to watch it. I know sometimes I like to watch it and not be distracted or talk to you know what I'm saying. And so when I booked this, I'm like, oh, this is gonna be great. I'm gonna do the interview with Jarrod, and then Sunday night I'll watch AEW Double or Nothing on Sunday on my couch, relaxing. And I forgot that stupid promotion does their shows on Saturday. So,
No
anyways,
worries, man. And I could have easily rescheduled if you need me to.
oh
So,
no, it's fine.
but
Nobody wants to watch this Jungle Boy and MJF match. Although I do really enjoy, and that's one of the things I said this to Ref Ryan T, um, a referee from House of Hardcore and GCW and
hmm
everywhere on Fight basically. And I
yeah,
said to him, I think it's happened since I've gotten older. Um, I love watching the refs now, and there's a whole you're one of them. There's a whole collection of refs I enjoy watching do their job. Their facial expressions, uh, just how they'll yell a two, or how they get in position. It's just they're part of the match. It's they're another person in that match telling that story, and so that's one of the reasons I like to get the refs on. But you're a storyteller when you're in there, when you're in
yeah,
the ring.
absolutely. Yeah, and it's great. It's great to see that people like yourself are recognizing that, not because I believe that referees need stardom or fandom or anything like
Right,
that, but it is an essential key. When I was taught from day one, it was an essential key to make the match happen.
right. It's we had geez, I feel like I'm name dropping now. But we had Jimmy Corderas, longtime WWE ref, on
Yeah, yeah,
with us, and man, he had some great stories. And the funniest one was how he got in the business of refereeing, and he was just he goes, it was I was in the right place at the right time. They said, hey, what about this? What about the kid? He was, I guess he had been there setting up the ring and doing all this stuff, and I think it was Pat Patterson is what he said. Uh, what about the kid? The kid could ref.
Hmm.
And they're like, what? Really? And he was like, yeah, he's here anyways. And that's how he got his start in the
Yeah,
ring, just like that.
yeah.
Where does your love for wrestling stem from?
So I've always been a big fan of wrestling. Growing up, my mom was very apprehensive to let me watch it. So I was kind of condemned from watching wrestling, even though like my friends watched it and my uncle watched it. So when I go over to visit him, I'd get to see it. And then I got to a point where I started sneaking it. I would shut the door to my bedroom. I would turn it, my mom coming, I turned it off real quick. It wasn't like she hated wrestling or anything. She was just afraid of my safety. I'm mama's little boy, and I was a premature baby, so she was always afraid of things like that. But eventually, she finally gave in. We were actually, my dad was Navy, and we were getting shipped out to Japan. And so I think I was 12 years old, 12 or 13 years old, somewhere in that range. And like I was super depressed. And so my mom was like, all right, you can go to these wrestling events and you can go do all this stuff. And then I just, I mean, I think one of the first matches I ever saw was Ultimate Warrior. Um, and it was just, he was like a real life superhero. He had
Yeah.
the face paint and the bright colors and the tassels and the muscles. And I was just like, oh, that's really, really cool. And it was the first thing that I experienced aside from like Disney movies when I was younger that was a captivating story that I really wanted to see what happened next versus like baseball and football. There really wasn't a story. It was entertainment, but there wasn't anything that drew me into it. And then it was just something that I always liked. Coincidentally enough, I didn't know about New Japan Pro Wrestling, and when we moved overseas to Japan, I was ambivalent to the fact that there was wrestling over
Yeah.
there, and they didn't have live, like you couldn't watch Raw, you couldn't watch Nitro, you couldn't watch any of that stuff live. So I would catch things weeks and weeks and weeks later. But when I came back is when I really, really got into the Attitude Era. Graduated high school, grew up really, really fast, forgot about wrestling for a period of time. And I say that I forgot about it. I just wasn't watching it actively.
Mm-hmm.
And then slowly started getting back into it a lot more. Um, and that's been my life, ever since. I'm a wrestling fan, but I don't like it doesn't control my life or anything. I'm not watching AEW right now, not because I don't want to. It's just me and my wife are doing things right now.
Yeah.
I'll catch it later
Yep.
on Plex or something like that. But long story short, how I actually got personally involved was back in '08, for those who did sports massage therapist, and I was at the '08 Olympics with the women's U.S. national soccer.
Oh.
I was working with him in WWE, and he knew that I was a big wrestling fan, so he's like, hey, listen, if I'm in your area, I'll pull for you to be a massage therapist for us. And so I got to work about 2 or 3 shows with them as a massage therapist. And then they started going a different direction with massage therapy. And a couple years later, my mentor in the massage therapy business was living in Tampa because he was working with the Women's Tennis Association down there. But I knew that FCW was down in that area, so I asked him if he had any connections. He didn't have any connections down there, but one of his former students up here was actually an independent pro wrestler by the name of Pete Casa. Um, and so I met up with Pete. He brought me into kind of this area, and everything's kind of evolved from there.
Wow. Um, the U.S. women's national soccer team, huh? '08, you said?
Yes, sir. In '08,
Nice. That was
I've been working. I've been working on and off with U.S. Soccer since 2005. So,
Oh man, I'm
but
so
yeah, '08
jealous.
was the big deal.
We should turn this into a tire soccer stream now. I didn't I was never into soccer. They didn't have it. Well, they had it for girls in my high school. Not
Okay.
for boys. I was never into it. I didn't get into soccer until like 12 years ago. I can remember it was 12
Okay.
years ago exactly because my oldest daughter is going to be 11. And so when she was born in June, and so I was home from work in the summer, uh,
Hmm.
and they had the World Cup on that year, and I got the men's World Cup, and it was on
Hmm.
early in the morning, and I was up anyways with the baby, and I just got into it, and then I got into the women's World Cup the next year, and then I was playing FIFA on all the consoles, and I just fell in love with it, and I remember. And I love the women's national team. I mean, they're just out of this
Definitely
world.
something special for
Yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah,
I have 3 daughters, so uh, showing them this women's national soccer team as they're growing up at this age, my daughters, I couldn't be prouder. And it's just that's interesting. So you went
that's
from
awesome.
soccer
Yeah.
into into wrestling, but okay. So did you have like visions to be a wrestler? Like, how does it go?
That's a good question. So like when I was younger, yeah, you want to be a
Yeah,
wrestler,
don't we all?
and Yeah, and when the first year of Tough Enough was announced and was released, I was like, I can do this. I had no idea what was involved in being a wrestler. I thought it was like, hey, I'll just show up to New York and we'll do this thing. And then reality kicked in, and it was like, yeah, you're gonna have to work for a living, and you're gonna have to pay bills, and so that dream was suspended. And going back to what I said earlier, when I started working with Old School Championship Wrestling here in Charleston, South Carolina, the pitch to them was, listen, I will sponsor you guys if you allow me, rather than giving you like a financial donation, I will come into your locker room and I will treat all your guys free of charge.
Yep.
Just because that's what I really like to do. The friend of mine who kind of brought me in, Pete, he was running an angle with another guy, and they had this idea of, well, what if we kind of have you just kind of, quote, save the day or stand in the way or whatever, and just add to the story.
Yeah, just a
Well,
distraction. Yeah.
Yeah, well, not even the distraction, but like just to add, enrich the story and kind of bring in a different element. But in the state of South Carolina, you have to be licensed if you're within 6 feet of the ring. You have to be licensed.
Oh.
So they were like, you're going to have to learn the basics just so you know what to expect, if depending on what angles we do. So I started training with Bob Keller and John Schuyler out of Columbia, South Carolina, and just started learning kind of the essentials, the basics. And within several I would say probably 3 or 4 different training sessions, Bob kind of was like, well, have you ever thought about maybe doing refereeing work? And I was like, well, why not?
Yeah.
And then that slowly evolved into, well, you have the athleticism. Have you ever thought of potentially wrestling? And I was like, well, okay, tempt fate, if you will. So for a period of time, I was actually refereeing in the lower part of the state, and then I would go to upstate or out of state and wrestle there. So it was kind of like living like a dichotomy. And in several areas here locally, I would be on the same show and I would work under a hood and then referee for the rest of the show. I injured my shoulder a while back, and it was at that time I was already kind of in my mind like, this is too much for me, running several businesses, trying to do referee work, trying to do wrestling work is just too much. So that was kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. I said, if I'm going to be a successful massage therapist, I got to keep my shoulder, and so I felt at that time that I could add more value to a wrestling match and a wrestling show as a referee than I could as a wrestler. So I decided to kind of put all in right on being a referee and learn as much as I can and go from there.
And it shows. You're definitely part of the story, as we had mentioned earlier. And I first noticed you in NWA, the resurgence of NWA Power. That's where I saw you. In one of the interesting things I always like to ask a couple of the refs that we've had on. You probably get questions like this all the time, but I was just watching the casino ladder match on AEW, and I was thinking, wonder. I want to ask Jarrod, what's one of the most difficult matches to officiate?
Well, the more people in the ring, the
Yeah.
more difficult it is. And with matches like that, you're just on the outside of the ring, so
Yeah.
you're just there. You're there for safety at this point. But actual matches, the more people there are, like I did one on Hard Times pay-per-view where it was a 3 tag team match. So it was Rock and Roll Express, it was Eli Drake and James Storm, and then it was the Wild Cards. So you've got 3 teams with 1 representative of each of them inside the ring already. Then you've got Camille on the outside, and then you've got 3 different cameras that you have to stay out of the way of.
Right.
So it's narrowing you into this very small section. Not to mention you've got to have eyes all around your head to see what's going on. So that's always challenging to do. Other than that, there's really no other match that I feel like is a challenge, so to speak, to do. Because I really like to test myself.
Yeah.
So I'm open for just about anything. But I could tell you one thing that I really do like to do that I've been involved with is several different like no holds barred, unsanctioned street fight style matches, which a lot of referees don't necessarily like because there's really no rules, right?
Right. Like, what are you there
So
for?
yes, but that's the thing is like you said a minute ago, is you have the ability to make it more believable.
Yeah.
Because one of my biggest pet peeves, and I tell a lot of people, like a lot of referees that maybe reach out to me for advice or whatever, is the worst thing that you can do is stand in the ring and watch.
Yeah.
Like if something big happens in the ring and the referee's just like, oh, cool, that happened. Like there's no urgency. Our number one job, whether it's a shoot or whether it's a work, is the safety of everybody inside that ring or
Right.
outside of that ring for that matter. So like you have to show the urgency. If you saw somebody take a fall off of a ladder
Right.
in real life, you would go to check on them because you have no idea, did they hurt their head? Did they hurt their back? That type of thing. So that's why I like those matches, is because there's so many unique things that could happen that allow you to help paint a picture, and you get to a point where you can even have the authority to say, yes, it's no holds barred, but me as a human being, I'm a bleeding heart for this guy that's about to die right now. I have to call the match. And then that's usually when they can come back and be like, no, you're not stopping this. And it pulls out more of a story.
We we were watching before you got on. We were watching, AEW, and Aubrey Edwards, a phenomenal ref, great ref. Aubrey
Absolutely.
starts putting gloves on in the middle of the match, and I'm thinking to myself, all right, somebody's bleeding. Somebody must be bleeding. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking, and I don't see any blood. What do you think? What goes through? Like, why would the gloves be put on? Did I just pick up on something? Should she have had them on before the match? Uh,
Oh, that's a good question. 'Cause I'll be honest with you, um, in some of the lower federations that
yeah,
I work with, I say lower just because they're not popular. There's really no rules. So you kind of have to be, I say there's no rules as far as like, hey, referees, you need to be sure that if this happens, X, Y, and Z. I believe in with all genuine sincerity, that every referee should be CPR, first aid, first responder certified, no matter what, just because you need to have that knowledge. Um, but for me, like I always carry a med bag with me that's got gloves in it, bandages, things like that. And I always have gloves in my back pocket because as a massage therapist, like
right,
that's one of the things that we have to deal with DHEC. We know about bloodborne pathogens, and some of these guys, they might not know about that. So, she may have seen something
right.
and thought it would be just a safe bet. You can never be too safe. Um, I don't know because I didn't actually see it, so I couldn't
Yeah,
even give you an
yeah,
insight into it. But I know personally, if I see the slightest bit of, maybe even you bit your lip and it's just got the little bit there, or sometimes you'll scratch your nose or something and there's just enough there, like I'm gonna go ahead and put my gloves on anyway, just to be
yep.
safe.
You brought
So
something up that it never even occurred to me till you said it out loud. Um, all the refs should be CPR and first aid trained and
absolutely.
certified. That makes complete sense to me. And know about bloodborne pathogens and all that stuff. Like the stuff I work in the school system, so I learn all. I have to take all those trainings as well. Special needs school system, so I have all that bloodborne stuff.
Hmm.
OSHA, I think it's called.
Hmm.
And but when you said that, I was like, yeah, that makes sense to me. Like why I would have assumed they are, but I guess not.
And it's one of those things that's one of the prerequisites that I feel would, and I don't believe it's ever going to be sanctioned that way, because there's already people that complain about having to get a sports physical
Hmm.
like to wrestle and everything. But I think it's a responsibility, and it's one of those things that just adds value to your position in the company, your position in the storytelling. Just because you can actually, even if you don't need those tools because there's a serious injury, if you're working an angle, you know how it should look,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
therefore you can convey that. And then the people mean, a TV show with my wife or whatever, and they're doing quote CPR,
Yeah.
and I'm like, no, that's not how you do it. Like there's people out there that are watching it going, no, you're not doing it right, that type of thing. So it just creates more of a genuine aspect
Yeah.
of what's going on.
Relatability. Um, Biggest bump you've ever taken?
Oh man, that's a good question. I have to roll through my mental Rolodex here. Um, I've had a couple of really good ones. I won't call them like the biggest bump.
Right.
I was working a match with PWX Rise of the Champion. I can't remember which one it was, but it was Darius Lockhart versus Shane Strickland for the ITV title. At the end, Darius won, little send-off type thing, and then Chase Owens comes in from out of the crowd. He had just come back from New Japan.
Yeah.
I had only worked with Chase one time, very very briefly, so we didn't have a relationship or rapport or anything. He comes in, he does the package pile driver on Darius. I try to get him out of the ring. He looks at me, and he just kind of gives me that nod and gives me the super kick. And when he does, as he's delivering that super kick, I just kind of jump up just enough so that when it hits my chest, it throws me into the ropes and catapults me back down to take a big old face bump.
Oh.
So that was probably one of the most unique ones that I did as far as how it just genuinely worked. The biggest one, I guess you could say, I was working with Big Time Wrestling, and there was an angle. It ended up being Shane Douglas and Bully Ray versus C.W. Anderson and John Schuyler.
Bully Ray.
It was quote EC. It was a ECW match, so there was really no rules. Earlier in the show, I had cost Schuyler a match. Schuyler's CW took out Shane and Bully, and so they started kind of trying to rough me up. They put me on the turnbuckles. I'm terrified. Oh my God, what's happening? Bully comes in, Shane comes in, cleans house. They get Schuyler's legs spread, and they're arguing with who's going to do the whole, what's up thing. And then they look at me, and they're like, you do the what's up. And I'm like, me? No, I can't do that. I'm a referee. And they're like, and the crowd's going crazy. I do the what's up, face bump. And then, of course, I sell it really, really well, like because I'm a referee.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be able to take that and pop right back up.
Yeah.
But finish the match. It was cool. It was very fun. So I guess that would be the biggest one I've done because it was off the top rope.
That's a hell of a one to do. The what's up?
Yeah, it was funny.
I friend of the show here. I'm putting you over Gary Horn from the NWA podcast.
Yeah, I love Gary.
Yeah, and you've talked to him before, and I told him, I go, I'm gonna have Jarrod on tonight, and he's like, oh, great guy, this and that, and I'm like, yeah, he goes, make sure you ask him about Ref Fit, and I go, I'm gonna, I had it written down, Gary, don't tell me how to do my show, but
he's already got his own show, right?
Yeah, right, I know, but no, he spoke so highly of you, he was very excited. Awesome, that you were going to be on. So yeah, big shout out to the NWA podcast. This is the NWA. Gary's doing great stuff. Everyone knows.
Yeah, absolutely.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about Ref Fit and all that?
Cool. So there's a really cool video. I can send it to you. I've got it on my YouTube channel. It was very well produced by a buddy of mine who's a videographer. It goes through the whole like evolution of what Ref Fit is. It's very short. But to kind of sum it up for anybody who's listening or watching right now, it was right after my shoulder injury, and I was basically homebound for about 8 days.
Mm-hmm.
They told me to not move, so I couldn't work, I couldn't do anything. And I already, as I said, I already run my own massage therapy business, and I'm very familiar with branding and hashtags and how to get those type of things working in. And at that point, I was like, what can I do right now as a referee? Because, when a wrestler gets hurt, they're like, hey, go buy my T-shirts or my 8x10s or whatever.
Yeah.
But, like, what can I do? And prior to the injury, I was really big into CrossFit, competed several times. But I knew I wasn't going to be able to do that for quite a while. but I knew that I had to keep fitness at the top of my game any way that I possibly could because that's what was going to get me through it. So for those who don't know, I'm straight edge. So I don't drink, I don't smoke. I have a hard time taking Tylenol, that type of thing. So my addiction, if you will, is like fitness and working out and getting that rush from that. Um, so Refit was kind of conceived in a notion where I didn't really think that I could do anything. And it was just like I'm going to start branding this and I'm going to start keep pulling it. And then once I got better and committed to that, and I started helping other people wherever I could with that, the idea of RefFit was just a play on CrossFit,
Yeah.
and it's more of like I tell people, it's a lifestyle. You don't have to be a referee, and you don't have to be into fitness to be RefFit. RefFit is all about mindset. It's all about taking care of yourself any way that you can in baby steps. So it's it's really just a brainchild of positivity and getting through this crazy thing called life.
Yeah. It,
Yes, indeed.
Whoa.
Cody's favorite wrestler growing up.
sorry. I had an audio kick. Anyways, yeah, the Ref Fit, from what you just explained and what I've seen on your Twitter, and I apologize that I don't have the link for your YouTube. I have your Twitter up and whatnot.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine.
But it is a mindset, and it's a way of life, I guess. And I mean, what a better time to do Ref Fit than now? You know, everybody's looking for something, and so yeah, that was great stuff. Now, before I was gonna let you go, I told you I'm very very good about what I say. What I say is what I do. That's what I teach my kids, my real kids, and my students. If I say something, I'm gonna do it. But something that popped in my head when you said Ref Fit and CrossFit that I wanted to ask you about was you were on Broken Skull Challenge, right?
Yes, sir.
With
Yes, sir.
with Stone Cold.
Yes, yes. I believe it's season 2. I can't remember because it was so long ago. I believe it's season 2. It's episode 13. The name of the episode is King of the Hill. So if you're searching that, it'll probably tell you what season it is.
Yeah.
I can't honestly remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a hell of a
Yeah,
time.
what was that experience like? Because I mean I'm home. I'm home. I've been home since Friday the 13th. And so I turned on Pluto TV, which is like free cable because we don't have cable here.
Yep.
We just have streaming stuff. I put it on
Yeah,
Pluto.
we've got the same thing.
Yeah, so I put it on Pluto, and I'm scrolling through the things, and I watch Beavis and Butthead. I keep scrolling. Oh, this that. Oh, there's Stone Cold's thing. Let me watch that. I've never seen it before. And I watch a couple episodes. They're running up the hill. They're climbing the thing.
Yep.
So now I'm gonna have to go back and watch it and see if I can stumble across you. What was that? What was that like? Do you have any funny stories with?
Oh man. So the whole process itself was really it was I think the best word that I could say was either fortuitous or serendipitous, whichever one you'd prefer to use.
Yeah.
So a buddy of mine was on the first season, and we had this big watch party after a wrestling show, and me and my wife were there, and we were like, how did you get on it? He's like, I just went online and there's an application. And I was like, oh, cool. And so my wife was like, you should do that. And I was like, yeah, no, I work out and everything. Like, there's no way that I can hang with those guys. Those guys are like huge and super fit and whatever. But to her urging, I decided to fill out the application. And honestly, I forgot about it. Like I completely forgot that I did it. I got home one night from work. And my rule of thumb is if somebody calls my phone, because my office phone number is my cell phone number.
Yeah.
If somebody calls after hours, I just send it to voicemail, particularly if I don't recognize the number, and then I'll get to it later. Well, it was a California number, which is something that doesn't happen a whole hell of a lot. I checked the message, and it was so-and-so from whatever production company it was. I can't remember. Hey, we just got your application. We'd like to learn more. Can you do a Skype interview? It's like, well, absolutely. Set that up, told the story of, basically who I was, what I wanted to do, X, Y, and Z. And they're like, hey, we really like your story. Can you please fill out a background check? And so, yeah, absolutely. The problem with background checks is when you run your own business, it takes really, really long to get through it all. Long story short there, it took longer, so they went with somebody else.
Oh,
So I was like, okay, I'm kind of bummed and whatever. And I was training really, really hard. And so because I was putting myself through so much rigorous training, I said, for the next week or so, I'm just going to take off and relax and chill out. About 8 days later, I get a phone call. They're like, hey, the guy fell through. Can you make it? I'm like, yeah, sure. When? We'll fly you out in 4 days. So I hadn't really been training or anything like that. And I get there and it's a whirlwind. It really is. They fly you out. You immediately get there. You pick up some of the other guys. You go straight to the doctor's office so you can get your physical. Then you go to the hotel. And then they're like, oh, by the way, you have one more interview before we find out who's going to be on the episode. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. Now, mind you, this is California, so this is 4 hours,
yeah.
4 hours behind. I'm exhausted. It's now, I think it was like 8 o'clock in the evening there, so it was like almost midnight here. They come in for the interview. They're like, hey, we're going to call you probably around 9:30, 10 o'clock. And it was like 9:50. I remember because I was like, man, I'm so tired, but I don't want to miss this phone call. They called. They said, hey, can you be down in the lobby at 5 a.m.? I was like, yeah. So of course I have to call my wife. So I'm dead tired. But then you go to the set and you have to do all the pre-taping stuff that they have to do for, all the opening video packages and whatnot. And you're there for almost 4 hours doing all that before you even meet Steve or do any of the competition or anything. There wasn't any really cool, super fun stories with the exception of the fact that Steve would pull each of us aside kind of randomly and just talk as if we'd known each other for years. Hey, how was your trip in? That type of, and it's just like surreal because you're like, holy shit,
Yeah, I bet.
this is Steve Austin, And what's funny about it is shortly after that, I was going to be doing a wrestling training camp with Dr. Tom Pritchard. And I told him that. He's like, oh, man, me and Tom go way back. Can you tell him I said hello? I'm like, yes, Steve. I will tell Tom Pritchard you said hello. So that was a cool a little thing. And then the last time he and I spoke, he's like, hey, man, can I give you some wrestling tips? I'm like, by all means, please give me some wrestling tips. And it was great. And it was a really fun time.
He does have that vibe. Like if you ever met him and talked to him, like he does have that vibe. Like he's known you forever. That's what he portrays. It seems like
super cool, super laid back.
Yeah. All right, Jarrod. I told you I keep you 30 minutes. We've been doing about that. And I like to live by that. I
tell you what. If you've got questions, I'm good. Let's go. If you got more questions, let's go.
You put me on the spot. I don't have much more questions.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
You know what? Here, I got one for you, and it parlays into the last segment, which I always give the mic to the guest, and they can put themselves over. I can't help you keep mentioning your business, and I've asked you about everything else. Why don't you tell me about the business you're running?
Okay, so to keep it real and transparent, I actually, if we're not considering refereeing a business, if you will, but it is, but we've already established that. There's 3 other businesses that me and my wife kind of run. The first most important one is Define Therapeutic Massage, which is based out of Charleston. And then I work with a health and wellness supplement company called Advocare that kind of pairs in with all the stuff that I do.
Yeah.
And then me and my wife do travel agency work with a focus to Disney. So, we kind of got our hands in a whole bunch of different pots just to kind of stay active and relevant.
Yeah, busy. That sounds like a lot of work. A lot.
Well, it fits in where it needs to, which is great. One of the most generous things that I could say that's come out of this whole quarantine, pandemic, COVID virus thing is prior to all this, I was working 5 days a week, and I wasn't like slam packed by any means.
Yeah.
But now coming back into it, they encourage us to have limited hours. So I've honed it down to a 3-day work week, and it looks like it's going to stick, which gives me the opportunity to do the other things that I want to do as well. So After doing massage therapy for almost 16 years and running the massage therapy business that I have for 9, it's a very welcome reprieve because it's finally giving me that opportunity to rest or have the ample time to rest properly and enjoy the fruits of my labor at home with my wife.
Yeah. And a big shout out to your wife tonight for loaning you to me.
Well, she is occupied right now. She's been for the past month and a half making masks for anybody who wants them. So she's been basically doing that all day and all night so far.
Awesome. All right, this is the time of the show where, and we'll have you on again for sure. When I come up with some, I'll talk to Gary. Gary will give me more questions. But this is the part of the show where I like to give the mic, so to say, to the guest, and you can put yourself over. You can plug whatever you need. Let us know whatever you want to do. If we haven't covered it at all, or you just want to nail it home one final time, the floor is yours, my friend.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
As I said before, I'm very into social media, but I have a hard time because I don't have anything uniformed. But if you want to follow me on Facebook, my fan page is Jarrod Fritz Referee. On Twitter, it's at JFritzRefLife. On Instagram, it's Jarrod.Fritz. And then the YouTube channel is fairly new. I believe you just search my name, Jarrod Fritz, and it pops up. But as I said before, the hashtag RefIt, you can put that in the search engine of any social media, and it's going to attach you to everything that I do. But I want to take the moment to thank you for having me on and linking me in with all your listeners and viewers and followers and everything. And it's been fun, man.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed it.
I really appreciate the referee, and that's how I stumbled across you. So
well, thank you very much.
Yeah, so
really means a lot. It really means a lot because refereeing can be a very thankless job, but it's, as you said at the very beginning, it's a key element to the story, and I think more and more people are seeing that, which is awesome. It's fantastic.
Yeah. All right, man. Well, we'll be in touch, and have yourself a wonderful night. Tell the wife I said hi. Keep up the great work making the masks. Awesome.
Will do, man. Thank you so much. Take care.
Yeah, take care. See ya.
Bye.
All right. I was going to keep him on. I was going to keep him on a little longer, but what I said at the start, you know.
This guy's called the Standing Streamer. The champ is here!
Hey, Brian Zane from Wrestling with Regret, and you're watching Putting You Over.